Thank you so much for having me this morning. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. As Yasmin mentioned, I am a board member of Join. Join is an organization here in Toronto, and it's actually starting to branch out over Ontario. It's a network of service providers who specialize in employment for persons with disabilities. And we started to form Join a couple of years ago because we saw the need to work more inclusively together as far as getting employer understanding around hiring people with disabilities. So it's something I'm extremely passionate about. And in my own work, I deal with multi-barriered youth, so youth from every walk of life. So it's exciting for me to be here and talking to you this morning. I want to start off by saying when I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the only person in my house up at that hour is my 8-year-old son, who's got to watch cartoons at that time in the morning. And he said, geez, Mom, what you doing up at, this early in the morning? Where are you going? And I said, well, I'm going to go speak to people about employment. And he said, well, why are you going to go speak to them about employment? And I said, well, I'm going to go talk to people who have disabilities and tell them about some of the challenges around getting employment. And he said, well, they should work at the bank where Papa works. And I said, well, I agree. I think that would be great. And I said, but why the bank? He goes, well, you don't need to walk to work at the bank. And I thought, if we could keep that mentality around ability, you don't need to do X to do X. And that's sort of my messaging when I'm talking to employers all the time, is trying to get around those barriers that they sort of throw at me. So a little bit, I want to give you a little bit of statistic stuff, and then I hate to say it, but it's not the most inspiring. So we'll get to the inspiring stuff after. The statistics show in Canada that only about 54% of individuals with a disability, over half of them are unemployed compared to more able-bodied human beings. So we're talking about the unemployment rate is 5 times higher. Now you add youth to that, you add class, social economics, race, and it becomes multi-barrier. It seems daunting, doesn't it? It seems very daunting. It's like, wow, I've got all these barriers before I even get out there and start looking for a job. But I have a feeling that many of you have already faced lots of barriers, so I'm sure this is just another thing to conquer. And I have to tell you, it's possible. And it takes a lot of work, but it is absolutely possible, and I see it every day in my work. We did a survey of employers in Toronto, over 101 human resource executives, and we asked them a lot of questions about basically where does your anxiety come from around hiring people with disabilities. And I found the reaction extremely interesting. The biggest obstacle to hiring a person with a disability is the employer's concern that they'll be unable to manage and underperform as a person with a disability. And when polled, 36% of human resource executives said that they were discouraged from hiring a person with a disability. Are you ready for this? Because it's harder to dismiss an underperforming person. So their whole theory is, I'm really worried about hiring a person with a disability because what happens if I have to fire them? Now, I know that when I go for a job interview, it's very likely to say, I don't know about hiring that Janna because what do I do if I have to fire her? That's the way it is across the board, but they see that as being an obstacle. What happens if this person underperforms and I have to fire them? They worry about the bottom line. They worry about accommodations. They worry about expenses. I mean, these are the things you need to know before you walk in the door. This is where a lot of employers' heads are already at. However, on the plus side, a lot of employers talked about the advantages of hiring people with disabilities. They talked about the perspective that people bring, the inclusion that people bring. But I think it's important, and my message to you today is around being your own advocate. Because the bottom line is, when you get in there for that interview, you need to know what's probably happening inside that employer's mind for a lot of employers, not all employers. And I'm going to just talk really briefly about that. But there's a stigma, and the number one barrier is stigma. It's being uneducated and not knowing. So on top of being nervous for your interview and getting prepared and having your cover letter and having your resume and you get the interview and you go in, on top of all that, now you have to be your own advocate. You have to be your own self-promoter. You have to be better. You have to be better than everybody, and you have to be able to stand there and make sure that you get your case across. I can have a lot of statistics to back up some of the things that I want to say today, but I think most importantly is my own experience with working with people and working with employers and how to overcome some of those barriers. So number one, you need to break through, and you need to be realistic about your expectations and understanding the market. Now, when I talk about understanding the market, I'd say this to any youth that comes in to talk to me is, if you came and sat in my office and said, you know, Janna, I really want to be a professional belly dancer. It's what I've always wanted to do. I want to be a professional belly dancer. And I would say to you, well, you know what? You need to go out and come back to me and tell me, what kind of market is there out there for professional belly dancers? Are they hiring right now? Is it a big market? Is everybody going out there for right now? And have you really looked at whether or not you have the qualifications to do this? I think it's being realistic. It's being able to say, I'm able to do this job. This is what I need in order to do this job. You need to network. What you're doing here today is amazing. You're networking. Every single person in this room either knows someone who has a job or has a job. And that's the best way to get employed. Oh, you know, I know Fred, who knows Bob, who knows Jim, who knows what. That's your network. That's how you create people who will be able to see you and welcome you and maybe have some understanding. Understand your employer's fears, and be ready to be your own advocate. Be ready to explain to them around accommodations. And does everybody know what I mean when I talk about accommodations in the workforce? Okay. And then you have to deal with your own family and your own community. And research that I was reading just a couple of days ago stated when a person's labeled as having a disability, it's not uncommon for parents and family members to regard this person as unable to learn how to take responsibility for their own lives. And I don't believe that. I think you all have the responsibility for your own lives. And the thing with job search, it is the ultimate responsibility of having to get out there. Knowing your accommodation needs are extremely important when you're talking with employers. What limitations am I experiencing? How might they affect my job performance? And then what specific tasks are problematic as a result of my ability differences? So if you can address that to an employer and then give them the solutions, what accommodations are available to reduce or limit these altogether? Does my supervisor or my coworkers, do they need any training, education around muscular dystrophy? So like I said, how am I doing here for time?
You're doing just fine.
I'm doing just
about 3 more minutes.
Okay, so my own experience, there are 3 types of employers, and I worked for the Royal Bank for a while in recruitment, and I've worked for service providers, and I've done a lot of work trying to promote disability in the community. And there are 3 types of employers. There are the employers that are federally regulated. These are employers that, by law, are being told by the government a certain percentage of the people you hire must have a disability. Do they comply by this? Yeah, sometimes. But what's interesting about this is they will often have opportunities where they're seeking to fill positions, and they're really going out into the community and trying to find people with disabilities. Banks are a great option, government. This is a great opportunity where you want to disclose, where you want to say, I have a disability, I fall into this group, I can do the job, because they're actually seeking. Then you have the employers in your own network. So this is your friend Bob, who knows you, who knows your dad, who knows whatever, and they have some understanding around how to accommodate. They have some understanding around how to serve you as an employer, just as well as you can serve them as an employee. These are my 2 favorites, and then there's the third, the one that doesn't know anything. And and that's the group, unfortunately, where the barriers really lie. The group that's, completely freaked out, doesn't know how to handle this. Oh my gosh, this is going to cost my business $1 million. That's a really big uphill battle. Which is why I suggest, if you have service providers, if you have agencies in wherever you live, they can help you navigate through that. They can help you say, this employer doesn't have a great reputation, this employer has a great reputation. We're talking about Government of Canada, certain banks, and then you get the odd small business where that business owner is willing to take a chance. He's willing to make the effort so that you can prove yourself. And those, to me, are the most exciting. answering people's concerns, I wish I could tell you that you're not going to have to do that, but you are. You know, whether it's direct or indirectly, you're going to have to be able to answer employers' concerns, because they're going to, in a certain way, state certain concerns that they have, and you have to be ready to say, you know, I hear your concerns, but I can do this job, and this is how I'm going to do it. It may not be exactly the way it's always been done. It might be different. It might be better. When I was recruiting for RBC, I thought it was all that, and I was, you know, really pushing disabilities, and I was getting everybody in the door, and I would do phone interviews, pre-interviews on the phone, before people came in for a face-to-face. And I remember being challenged because I called this person and said, you know, I'd like to have a phone interview with you. I think you'd be a great candidate. And they, you know, and then I say, for the personal interview, do you require any accommodations? But I didn't ask them if they required any accommodations for the phone interview. Of course, this person emails me back and says, you know what? A phone interview is difficult for me. Can we do it via, you know, MSMing, or can we do it in person? Even someone like myself, who considers themselves quite knowledgeable, didn't suggest that. It took that person advocating on their own behalf and saying, you know what, I'm really excited about this phone interview, but a phone interview is really not a great way for me to promote myself. Making sure that you take the steps to promote yourself and get out there. It is possible. There are lots of resources. I could spend all day talking about resources, but I really wanted to just give you an overview of some of the obstacles you're going to face, but how they are overcome. And mostly they're overcome by people's own persistence. I don't mean stalking, I mean persistence. You know, I don't stalk the employers, but the ones that are the most persistent and are the most positive, they do break through. So I look forward to your questions, and I look forward to seeing you all out there telling me your success stories in the years to come. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Janna.